In this episode, I interview Austin Peckham, founder of Branded Golf. We explore his journey from a lifelong golfer to a creative force in the golf industry. Austin shares insights on how he transitioned from music production to golf content creation, emphasizing the importance of resourcefulness, self-confidence, and seizing opportunities. The conversation delves into the parallels between entrepreneurship and golf, the evolution of the sport, and the future vision for Branded Golf as a key player in the golf hospitality space. Let's jump into the episode. Welcome to The Range, the podcast where we explore the intersection of passion and business in the world of golf. I'm your host, Rory, and each episode will dive into the stories of the innovators, entrepreneurs, and trailblazers who are transforming the game we love into thriving businesses. Whether you're a golf enthusiast, an inspiring entrepreneur, or just curious about the business behind the sport, you're in the right place. So grab your clubs and join us on The Range as we tee off into the world of golf entrepreneurship. Welcome back to another episode of The Range. I am joined with Austin Peckham, founder of Branded Golf. I came across Austin on LinkedIn. It's really the beauty of the golf community. As big as it is, it's quite small, and looked into Branded Golf and thought it'd be a fun conversation for the audience. So Austin, welcome. Appreciate you joining.
Yeah, dude. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So let's jump right in. It's a good chance to talk about Branded Golf and just give the audience a understanding of what you do, and then we'll talk about the backstory and how you got into the sport. But what is Branded Golf?
Yeah, so Branded Golf is a production company that works exclusively in the golf, hospitality, and kind of food and beverage space. Because when I first started the company, it was like exclusively golf. And I started to realize that golf, hospitality, food, and beverage are very often being intertwined. So we really focus on those three pillars. We work with different brands, resorts, golf courses all across the U.S., just helping to develop high quality content that they can use for their socials, commercial work. I mean, we handle everything from small little social content shoots to full scale commercial production. So really just helping brands get the content and production that they need to be successful in this the era that we're in.
Yeah, and the era that we're in is driven by content, right?
Yes.
And I, as a marketing professional for most of my career, I've seen the evolution of content and the importance of quality when it comes to that content. How did you get into becoming a creative force in the golf industry?
So the story of how I got into the golf industry is really pretty wild. I've played golf my whole life, and I'm sure we'll talk more about my full story of how I got to where I am. But I've played golf my whole life. I played high school, a little bit of college, and then a few years after college, kind of went into the mini tour circuit. Very quickly realized that it wasn't good enough. All that to say, my wife and I had our daughter last November, and it kind of just spurred this thing in me of, okay, you need to be doing something creative, and I want to enjoy and love what I'm doing. So where in what industry can I do that in? And it just felt natural to land in the golf world.
But from as a creative, right? Like, so what were you doing prior to Branded Golf and creating content or helping to create content for your golf clients that allowed you to move kind of into this full time as a golf industry expert?
That's right. And so the part of my story I wanted to share in the golf world is that when I started Branded Golf, it was just an Instagram page, not an official business or anything. I was just like, hey, this is a cool name and it's not taken. I'm just going to park this and then work as Austin Peckham, because I didn't have any golf content. And I hadn't shot anything in golf at all. So I couldn't be a production company in the golf space showing music videos and random commercials that I had done in my past life. So I really didn't have any work to show. And my wife and I were on a trip in Montana. I guess it was last summer. And my buddy Jordan Green, who is another really awesome creative in the golf industry, he texted me and was like, hey, would you be open to a golf job? And I was like, heck yeah, dude. So he connects me with Golf Space Collective, which is an agency in the golf space that does all kinds of marketing and brand work for different brands across.
Yeah, we had Preston on a few weeks ago.
Right.
Great
Right.
dude.
So I get this call and it's like, hey, Austin, can you come to Connecticut to the Travelers to shoot with Hideki, Rory, Keegan Bradley? We're working with the Boston Common team with the new TGL League. And I didn't really know what exactly the shoot was going to entail, but it had me very interested, of course. I don't have any work in the golf space and I get to go potentially shoot with these guys. So I show up. It ends up being I'm leading the charge on a portrait shoot with Hideki to announce him as the final member of the Boston team. So I shot his portraits, did some work with the Boston Common team. In that same vicinity, we shot a little spot with Ricky inside the Cobra truck with a guy named Ben James that Cobra Puma had just signed. So it was just like, in what world is your first thing in golf that?
Right.
So it just felt like I'm a Christian who is a firm believer in, I just think that God has a plan for all of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And as difficult as that can be to navigate at times, it was kind of then that I realized, like, okay, I think this is the right path. I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
So I have the, I guess, unfair advantage of knowing a guest's story before they come on this podcast. And the reason I try to do that as best as I can is to make the interview go as smooth as possible. So I know how you got into being a creative, but I think the story is worth telling. Talk a little bit about how you even started to become a producer in the creative space. Obviously, prior to golf, you briefly mentioned shooting stuff. Like, talk a little bit about your past experience in the creative space, but even before that, what got you to move to Nashville?
So I think one of the first phones that I ever had. I mean, I had the LG chocolate, of course, a Razor, the Sidekick that flipped sideways.
You're dating yourself for sure.
I know. I'm 31 and I feel like I'm an old man. But I remember the original iPhone and it had an awesome camera on it, and it was just like literally a small little circle, and that was the camera in the back of the phone. So I remember going around my neighborhood and taking photos with the iPhone when I was younger, and then my degree is in food and nutrition, so I studied a lot of food science. And at one point in my life, I wanted to be a dietitian for women, all encompassing around pregnancy.
Mm.
So I went to school for food and nutrition, and at some point I was working at the front desk of a gym and doing some personal training. And I noticed all of this protein powder waste and different things happening behind the desk at the gym. And I sent an email to the owner of the gym, and it was like a 4 gym chain, and was like, hey, this is what I'm noticing. I'm studying food and nutrition. I'd love to help kind of like solve your logistic problem here. So him and I end up meeting. We developed a protein ice cream. He bought a ice cream maker, and at the same time he was starting a commercial kitchen that was like one of the nation's first meal prep company.
Mm-hmm.
This is before like Factor and all of the big meal prep companies. So long story short, there was a camera that in running this kitchen that I ended up doing, I was also responsible for taking photos of the food we were cooking and posting it to the Facebook. And then I decided after I graduated that I was going to move to Nashville and pursue a career as a country artist.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent my senior year in college playing all of the bars, just acoustic vocal shows around my college town, and really thought that I was being called to Nashville to be a country artist, and was there for a few months, broke, didn't have a job, and I like to say that I ended up with that camera that I had been using in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a Nikon D something. It shot EP video, which I'm dating myself again. I don't think there's any camera that really, I mean, you can like downgrade to some, but that was its max resolution EP. So I started, networking around the area, becoming friends with different songwriters and artists, and kind of got to the point where I would start having my friends over to the little garage section of the house I was renting to come shoot like an acoustic vocal video. And all of this was a Walmart plastic tripod, this Nikon, no audio equipment, just camera audio. It was just pointed at them, like the most like settings on auto, everything.
Yeah.
Hit record. They come in. I spit out a video. They're happy. And this was like, no one was really posting music related content on Instagram and Facebook at this time. So it was a big thing. And that just kind of snowballed. I ended up, buying some audio equipment from Guitar Center, teaching myself how to produce in Logic, to then I got a random call one day from a girl at Universal Music, and she was like, "Hey, Austin, I got your name from someone, and can you come help us shoot some Glenn Campbell stuff at Ocean?"
Hmm.
And Glenn Campbell is like top 5 country artists to ever live. He died from um, Alzheimer's in like 2016 or 17. So I shoot at like one of the most prestigious studios in all of the country.
Yeah.
Which again, it kind of is similar to my golf story. Like I don't know how or why these things happen to me, but um, I go shoot this project. I make $3,000 off of it, and it was so much money at the time. I basically took all of it, bought a new camera, one that shot 4K.
Hmm.
Like a week later, I shot my first music video for a girl that ended up coming out on CMT and getting played on television, making it into like the top, hot country countdown, whatever it was on CMT. And then the Glenn Campbell came out, and my name was featured in a Rolling Stone article with that stuff. And I was just like, holy crap, what is happening?
Yeah.
I think this is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life.
Yeah.
Kind of hung up the songwriter artist thing, started shooting videos. I go on to start a production company called Create Nash. We worked with hundreds of artists. I worked on Grammy award winning song videos, multiple #1 country song videos, #1 Christian song videos.
Hmm.
Kind of through that, did some stuff with like White Claw, Barnes and Noble, Ram trucks. Kind of got like commercial opportunities there. And I just went from a guy with a 720p camera to a director running 30, 40 person crews,
Amazing.
big budget projects. I mean, it was just insane.
Well, and I want to touch on that because a theme that I'm hearing, over the last few minutes of the story is resourcefulness, flexibility, and jumping at opportunities when the opportunity comes. Can you explain how that mentality has helped you as an entrepreneur? Obviously, you've given examples with the music video, with the TGL golf shoot in Boston, some of the ways that that mentality has shaped who you've become as an entrepreneur.
I mean, that's such an interesting question because I don't often reflect much on my own life. And as I look back to these opportunities, I can't envision any part of me that could have possibly said no or said to these people, no, I don't think I'm ready or I'm not capable of doing it. And like the Glenn Campbell stuff, I had a crappy camera, was definitely not qualified in terms of the work I had done to be able to do that project. I mean, arguably, I was qualified to do the Hideki stuff, but still, there's a there's a fear that comes upon you when you get tasked with big items and these big things. They're important things, and you're responsible for capturing it. And I think you just have to know that, and and trust yourself as a creator and as someone who has the talent and the abilities. Just trusting that you're going to be able to perform and
Yeah.
and do what's needed to be done. So I think a self confidence and having the self confidence to say, you know what, I don't know how this is going to go. Um, yeah, I'm scared. I don't quite know if I'm qualified at this point, but I'm going to go and crush it. And it's not the fake it till you make it mindset because
Yeah.
you're not, you have the skills and abilities. It's just, having that confidence in yourself to go fulfill the job.
Thinking about your experience in golf and trying to draw a parallel between your evolution as a golfer, and we'll touch on kind of the very beginning. Maybe you could start your answer with how you got into the sport to begin with. But I think there's some parallel between the experience as trying to be a pro on the tour or what trying to be the best golfer you could be in the same way as trying to be the best professional you could be or the best creator you could be. And I'd love for you to talk to the similarities between your experience trying to be a professional golfer versus the experience of, not like you said, not faking it till you make it, but extending yourself outside of your comfort zone as a professional, and talk a little bit about the similarities between the two as a golfer and then as a professional.
Yeah. So, to touch on, my story in golf, I had little tight plastic clubs as a baby. I'm sure there's photos somewhere of it, but a lot of my golf inspiration came from my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather, especially, he has just such a special place in my heart. He passed away when I was 16. But one of my favorite memories as a kid was going to their house in Aiken, South Carolina, which is like 30 or like 35, 40 minutes from Augusta. So it's just got that feel to it. And they lived on a golf course, and they had these like hedge bush things that would just eat people's golf balls. So I would go out there, collect a bunch of golf balls at night, go hit on the hole they lived on. And I think just growing up in a house and family that loved golf, loved the game. My dad was obsessed with the game. He built clubs when I was a kid. Um, and I think just being ingrained in the game of golf just really ignited my love for it. And then, uh, you know, middle school not being that great at golf to something kind of clicking towards the beginning of high school that was like, oh, you're getting kind of good at this game, to then progressing to be able to walk on at a university, and then feeling good enough about that game however many years later to go try to play mini tour.
Yeah.
But I think the comparison of trying to be a professional golfer or any athlete at a high level to this entrepreneurial journey, I would say, like, I've just always been someone, I've done so many different things, and I am interested in so many different things, and I've never been scared to just go and try it and do it. And I don't say this to toot my own horn, but like, there's not that many people that would randomly just decide at 29 years old, you know what, I'm gonna go try to play mini tour events, and I'm gonna try to make it to the Corn Ferry. And kind of the same trend throughout my whole life of just not being scared to take those chances and just go and do it. And I think the game of golf and entrepreneurship is so similar because they're both so hard. They require so much effort. It's scary at times, it's amazing at times, but I think that's what makes it interesting, and part of what I love about it is I wake up every day and I've got stuff on my calendar, but I truly never really know what's going to happen.
And I think that you nailed it. There's a trait that throughout all the conversations I've had so far, there's this trait of being unafraid and just going out and doing. That's so important. That crosses the barrier between golf and entrepreneurship. It's fascinating because that's the one similarity that I've seen in all the conversations. As you think about your transition to the golf space as a creative, and you think about the opportunity of going to shoot the Boston Common Club, how does that set up then the stage for you to create this agency or creative agency to go out and stay in the golf hospitality space? And I love early on you mentioned it's not just golf, it's golf hospitality that includes so much more. And I think we'll touch on the evolution of the sport since you've been tied to it throughout your whole life, but talk about how that event gave you the confidence and the ability to say, okay, I can do this, and this is what I want to do.
I mean, it was just such a surreal thing to have that be my start. And I think with my faith and with my experience in the creative world, I knew that, okay, I have an opportunity that I don't understand how this is happening and why this is my first opportunity, but I'm going to crush it, and I'm going to do well. And I know that if I do this, because of the experience I've had in the past, and I hope people listening to this, especially if they're younger in their journey as an entrepreneur and especially as a creative, when you have things or you're shooting events or big people, it's fairly common that things are going to follow after that if done well.
Yeah.
And especially, I mean, we live in a world, as tough as it can be sometimes, faces sell pretty much everything. And so when I had the opportunity to do that work with Hideki and that trip, I knew that if I did well, it was going to lead to more. And it just gave me the confidence to know that this is a real thing, and I'm going to go do it. And I'm going to take whatever comes from it and just run with it.
Yeah. I want to touch on kind of the growth of Branded Golf and where it is today and then where you see it going. But before I do that, I'm always fascinated. I've been lucky enough to be a part of photo shoots and interviews, speaking with athletes or even just being around athletes. Was there an advantage of how you dealt with Hideki and even Rory, being that you are a really strong golfer? And were you able to kind of talk inside baseball or inside golf with them, other than, oh, this is just another creative that has to shoot me or experience this photo shoot with me? Did it help having that background in golf that you have?
Definitely. And it helped in some ways, specifically on that Hideki shoot, having like I was probably wearing a golf hat, golf clothes. I looked the part. And when you have those conversations with talent that you're working with, that specifically, you can talk confidently about a golf ball, how to hold a club, where you want them positioned, things like that. So you're creative and using your creative experience, and you're also using your golf experience. But I think where I see it even more is, some of the other projects I've done with golf courses, with development companies, specifically where I have the unique ability to know and see, especially with like a golf course development.
Hmm.
I can see and I know what's happening on the ground. I know what they're building. I know what sand traps look like and greens look like. Whereas if someone who didn't know anything about the sport walked onto a property, they don't really understand what's going on. And I think it definitely puts you at a huge advantage. And I see that and am told that by clients that hire us that we want to work with people who understand our sport.
Yeah. Well, it's just more natural and organic, right?
Yes.
So as we think of branded golf today, you could look at the list of clients you've worked with, a lot of A class and top name brands and people. How do you continue to drive the business from a biz dev standpoint?
So, I mean, really, LinkedIn is massive, and I I didn't really believe it until I started doing it. And I don't necessarily like post a ton on LinkedIn. It's just the active engagement in the community and in the golf community. I've met so many awesome people, and it's just insane. Like uh, you think about Instagram and Facebook, like if you want to work with a brand, you can message their Instagram, but it's managed by someone who has no really connection to any decisions. But the fact that you can literally have a conversation with the head of marketing or the CEO or the president or the founder of all of these different golf brands, it's just such a cool way to connect with brands. So that's kind of like how we're getting traction,
Hmm.
just through LinkedIn and through other social media. But I think, for us, just growing organically and wanting this to, I say right now as I sit that Branded Golf is a production company that focuses solely on photo and video production.
Hmm.
We do manage social for a client, potentially taking on another social management client. And when I started out, that's not something that we were going to offer. But I'm open and fluid. This is my second production company in the creative world. So I've made a lot of mistakes previously and I've learned from those. So I'm kind of just like going with the flow of where it all leads and just, prayerful and hopeful that it will end up just being, whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Well, so far it's worked pretty well, that kind of mentality. And I think we touched on the flexibility aspect of being an entrepreneur and the importance of that. And I think how you just described it is spot on. As you think of the evolution of golf and where it was when you first started playing to where it is today to where it's going, talk about how branded golf can play a part in its evolution and why you guys are suited to be a force in the growth and evolution of the sport.
Well, first, I just love what is happening in this game. Um, you see so many people. I mean, this game means everything to me. I've spent my whole life learning it and learning from it. So to see other people getting to experience this game from the lessons it can teach, but also just the fun that you can have, from all ages. So when I see, indoor golf and 9-hole turf courses and some of those massive indoor facilities that I think they're in like Japan where garage doors open up after you hit in your sim bay and you walk out to your green, kind of like TGL. And then, of course, like TGL being nationally broadcasted. And there's even on the charitable side, I mean, I'm a part of a foundation that is looking and working to help bridge a gap to lower income golfers who have the talent and ability but aren't financially able to get to the next level. And I just think that there's a huge charitable part of golf and golfers and the industry as a whole is a very loving industry who does want to help. And I just love seeing all of the growth towards helping people learn the game, um, and increase their abilities and knowledge in the game, but then also just the fun side of it. So I love where it's going.
Yeah, I think that the two things that are really important that you talked about is the accessibility to the sport. And I think that it's so interesting to me, and I'd love your perspective on this, but growing up, and I'm older than you by a decent amount, but growing up, golf was always thought of as this stodgy sport for old white men. And I think over the last decade, certainly the evolution has started to be more diverse, more accessible for people of all races, of all backgrounds. And ultimately, I think, and you alluded to this, that's just better for the game. And I think the second point that, we could hit on more is it is a sport, so it should be fun. And I think oftentimes people, if they go out and shoot a 105 like myself, they're frustrated. But at the end of the day, if they play quick, if the other three in part of your foursome doesn't get upset with you, then it should just be fun. So talk a little bit about the accessibility side of things and then that fun aspect, because I do think that's a key aspect to the growth of the game that oftentimes gets mislooked.
Yeah, and I experienced the same thing growing up. I mean, golf and the people that I was surrounded by playing golf, it was, people who could afford to be out there, afford for their kids to play, all of those things. And I see so much change in that. I see, and especially like here in Tennessee, the Tennessee Golf Foundation, which I'm involved with, they do such a good job of helping kids learn the game, veterans learn the game and experience the game of golf. So there's just such a big push in increasing the availability of this game to other people. I think Scott Stallings too in Tennessee, he has a huge initiative program that provides free rounds of golf for kids in our state. And I think they've given like 10,000 plus rounds of golf or something crazy. So I feel like there's such a huge movement towards it, which is just going to continue to grow this game and just allow more people to experience it.
Getting back to your entrepreneurial journey, and it often in these interviews comes across that it's very easy to accomplish what you've accomplished, and there are no bad days, and entrepreneurship is fun and gratifying. Let's flip the coin a bit and just talk about some of those challenges and how you overcame them or overcome them, and how to persevere through some of the bad days that ultimately will happen to everybody.
So, I mean, in truthful, all honesty, I mean, like I do that Hideki shoot and that stuff comes out into the world and it's cool and it's great and it provides a little bit of momentum, but momentum without any action tends to just fall flat. And I was not a victim of it, but I myself was responsible for this, but I didn't have really a plan or anything for how I was going to kind of move and push my brand and this brand further. So I had a lull like 4 or 5 months ago where I have literally zero work, no income. It's super stressful. You've got a 1 year old at home, a wife that's self-employed. So things just start to get, and as your life kind of grows and you add family and all this stuff, there's a lot of other factors that weigh on you as an entrepreneur, but you get this stress and pressure of, oh crap, do I need to start looking for a job? And I have found myself, on the lowest of low days, Indeed.com, and I look and I scroll and I'm like, nope, can't do it. So there are low days, but I think the encouragement and what I have learned through this is that taking action, it doesn't necessarily matter what the action is, but doing something every day to grow and help yourself move forward as an entrepreneur. It's so silly. And there's probably so many creatives that don't really realize this either. We're creators. Yeah. We have cameras and equipment. And just because we don't have any clients doesn't mean that we can't go create. You should always be creating something. And I've gotten to the point now where if I'm not working on a project for someone else, I am going out and creating content, creating stuff that I think is fun and enjoyable. And it also just kind of helps keep you in the game and keep you motivated, being able to go create stuff, because a lot of us are driven by creating.
Yeah. And I think the point of action is so important. You touched on your daughter and your wife. And something I've constantly heard in these conversations is the importance of support and community. And community can mean everything from your friend group, your colleagues, people you've worked with, but ultimately those closest with you help you the most. During those low points, talk about the importance of family and talk about how your faith has kind of kept you going through the tough times and allowed you to celebrate the good times.
Yeah. I mean, I have such an awesome family. I have my wife is one of the most supportive people, not necessarily in the way that you might think though. She's not a everything's going to be okay. It's okay that you didn't do XYZ. She's a I think an 8 on the Enneagram. So she's like a driver, super driven. She sells real estate and she's incredible. So she has this like innate built-in drive to her. So when I say she's supportive, when I, as an entrepreneur, someone who's kind of the opposite of her, I get into my head, I get anxious, depressed, worried, stressed out. She's kind of the one that comes in and is like, hey, dude, you need to get your head out of your butt and go do something. So, which is it's tough because in a lot of moments that's not necessarily what you want, but she is so good at telling me what I need, um, when those moments arise. Outside of that, like my parents have been so supportive of everything I've ever done. I was so fortunate that my parents were able to pay for my school. It was a in-state, nothing super crazy school. Um, they paid for my school, and then the day I graduated, I dropped everything I had been working for and moved to Nashville, and they were supportive of it. That's been my experience with my entire family my whole life.
That's awesome.
So I'm grateful to have that support. And then, one of the bigger things recently is a big study my wife and I have done in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible. And kind of the biggest, not to get super religious, but the biggest principle is that none of this actually matters. The society has put into our heads that we need to have success and fame and money and all of these things. And I think when you realize that the things that are the most important are your family and your health and your friends, and
Yeah.
in my case, my daughter, it kind of just helps ease the discomfort of entrepreneurial life, because if you can remind yourself on a constant basis that, hey, none of this is really like, yeah, it's important that you have work that you need to fulfill and whatever else, but none of it's really that important. It kind of helps make things a little easier.
It's interesting. I just bought a book off Amazon. I think it's called The 5 Types of Success, and it's reframing what success actually means. And I think moving away from the monetary and that side of things and focusing on family, health, etc. I think it's Salil Bloom is the author, but yeah, I'm excited to dig in, and I agree with the sentiment. Oftentimes, entrepreneurship is thought of from those that don't experience it as people doing things for themselves. I think it's important to talk about your daughter and how this experience is helping shape how you raise her, and what she's able to see as she gets older, because she's still young, but as she gets older and sees you and your wife doing entrepreneurial things, how that can help shape her in what she wants to become when she gets older.
Yeah, that's such a huge topic in our household. I mean, she's 15 months now. She's got essentially 17 years until she may or may not go to college. And I question if like what university academics are going to look like 17 years from now. I'm not personally like a huge fan of the education system and how it functions. I was not a good student. I didn't get great grades. I couldn't stand sitting in a classroom and learning stuff I didn't want to learn. So there's been a lot of encouragement within our family of, how can we raise this girl to be strong and smart and know the things that she needs to know, but also have a fearless personality to be able to help her learn and harness her talents so that she can, I mean, like if you're 16 and let's just say she loves interior design and she starts doing virtual design for people for free, And then year one, she starts charging $500. By the time she's 24, she could have 12 employees and be running a full interior design firm. And I say all that while also understanding that not everyone, I know the people listening to this podcast probably want to be entrepreneurs, but not everyone can be an entrepreneur. And there's such integral roles in our society and how the world functions, and there's jobs that need to be done, and teachers and doctors and nurses and maintenance people and highway department people. Like, there's so many important people in our world that help keep us running, that allow people like me to do what I love. And there's this trend through social media right now of there's just so much junk of how to be an entrepreneur and work for yourself and blah blah blah. And nobody should work for anybody. Nobody should have a job. And that's just not realistic because there's so many important people in our world that keep it running. So I'm encouraging, and I want to be encouraging to our daughter to pursue whatever paths and help her harness those talents, or however that may be.
That's awesome. And I think it touches on this next question. If you were to give advice to entrepreneurs that are earlier in their journey, what are some key pieces of advice that you could offer?
So I have started both production businesses in my life. I started them by doing free work. It's hard to convince people to pay you money when you don't have anything to show them. And that might be the most basic, easiest rule that maybe everyone talks about, but I can't say enough good things about, if you want to do something, just go do it. Like, you don't have to wait for someone to pay you to do it. You just have to go start doing it. And then if you're good, then work will come. If you're not good, you need to get better. And then I think what we talked about earlier of just being fearless in your pursuit of whatever it is that you're doing. I think being scared is probably a recipe for not being able to be a successful entrepreneur. And when I say successful, I really just mean, it is, kind of a financial component, but like, can you survive off of the work that you're doing? And if you can, I consider that success.
Yeah, I think there's levels of success for sure, and I think the fact of being able to support the business and keep it going is in and of itself success. So I completely agree with you. Moving back to Branded Golf, talk a little bit about the future of the business and where you'd like to see it go as it continues on in its journey.
So I'm excited for, really what the next 6 months are going to bring and beyond. But there's a lot of irons out in the fire right now. Hopeful for some yeses and some, yeah, let's move forward on some bigger projects and bigger opportunities, and really just, wanting to be a plug and play production company for brands that already, we'll work with someone who has nothing and need a full consultation, brand consulting, just to get off the ground. But I think, as I see us moving forward, I really want to plug into existing brands who have, traction. They know what they're doing. They know what their brand is and how they represent themselves. And I just want us to come in and create, and I'm going to say the C word of content, even though I don't like it. I think that the world is filled with content. A lot of it is pointless. I want Branded Golf to be, a reflection of me and how I view the world and the stories that I see inside the world. And I really just want us to have the opportunity to help brands and courses and resorts and, all of these places around the world tell their story better and really just be genuine and help them be genuine, honest brands, because I think the world is yearning for just realness.
Yeah, I completely agree. Before we jump, we've moved into the rapid fire questions portion of the interview. And this is really meant to just give the audience a peek behind the curtain into you and allow them to get to know Austin a bit more and your connection to the sport. So a handful of questions, and then we'll let you kind of tell the audience where to find you on social and online, and then we'll jump. Sound good?
Yep, sounds great.
Awesome. Favorite course you've ever played?
It's going to be Pebble Beach because of the nostalgia.
What'd you shoot?
I think I was like 16. I shot like 85.
Yeah. Quick fact: during the intake call with Austin, I asked him what his handicap was, and mouth dropped when he told me. So let's give the audience a sense of what your handicap is.
Well, so I do have a 15-month-old, so it has gotten worse, but it's right at 0 now. It was plus like 3.5, I think, a year and a half ago.
I love how you say it's gotten worse and it's a
My
0.
my indoor TrackMan handicap on my TrackMan account is like plus 4.7 though. So whatever that.
Okay, what's the one piece of gear you can't live without on the course?
Golf gear or camera
Golf gear.
Okay, a towel.
Interesting.
One of the worst things is because you're always gonna have your clubs, but like one of the worst things is not being able to clean off your club.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you bring a towel to the green every time you putt?
No, I'm not. I
Okay.
use the grass, typically like off the fringe to clean my ball. I keep my bag on my towel I keep my towel.
Yeah, nice. Go to drink or snack or drink and snack during a round.
Coke Zeros, and it depends on if the course has it, but I think they're like chocolate something RX bar.
Okay, cool. If you could collaborate with any brand or do production work for any brand in the golf space, which would it be?
Oh, that's so difficult. I'm going to say probably I want to direct a Titleist commercial.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, hopefully this podcast will reach someone at Titleist and get a call back.
Love that.
What's your proudest moment as a golf entrepreneur so far?
Just making it happen. There's a lot of days I wake up, and even today I had driven out to a client, a golf course being built, and I was just like, dude, you just like your life outside of being a husband and a father is to things, photo and video in golf. And that's just like, I just am so grateful.
Awesome. I love the realness of that for sure. Last question. What's the biggest lesson golf has taught you about business? And you touched on it before, but
I think it's funny as the game of golf at a higher level has become so statistically driven. People have realized that there's a lot of risk that is actually very good, and the things that we used to as golfers view as big risk are actually statistically not very risky, as opposed to maybe like the safe play. Like, for example, getting satellite imagery of the width of a fairway at X distance and knowing that your percentage of hitting that spot is greater than playing back or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I think just the being able to take risks in golf and risks in business, smart, calculated risks, but just not being scared to take some chances.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Well, Austin, I've really appreciated the conversation. Definitely appreciate the time. Before we actually jump, tell the audience how they could find out more about Branded Golf and where they could find you on social.
So we're on Instagram and Facebook at Branded Golf, LinkedIn. I think it's just linkedin.com/Branded Golf. And then I'm personally on all social media at Austin Peckham. And then you've got brandedgolf.co. The .com was like $8,500. And I tried to message the seller of that domain and offered them a number that I thought was fair, and they rejected it, so it's .co.
It's a good reason to be .co. And well, thanks again for the time, and hope everyone enjoys the episode.
Thanks so much, brother. I appreciate it.
Take care.
See you.